music. I understand you need to make sure you.
Okay. Share.
She hadn't started the recording yet. She was getting the recording started.
All right. Welcome to Karen Ryce's Family Zoom Station, episode 8, Homeschooling Today and the One Rule. Whoa.
The internet is being slow today. No, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay, let's see if I can move this down. A little bit. No. During the first part of this 1-hour show, I shared tips and strategies that create harmony with kids. Then we opened things up for Q&A and discussion. Uh-oh. It said my screen sharing is paused. I don't, oh, here, okay. As we're going through this slideshow today, please think of situations with your kids or situations you've seen or heard of that might be solved using the one rule, especially situations for today's homeschooling parent. We could do this after the slideshow.
Can you refresh me, Karen, just what the one rule? Is that the respect?
The one rule is coming to agreement.
But that's it. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Do you ever come into conflict with your kids, especially now that everyone is at home and you have the added responsibility and stress of being their teacher? Would you like to transform that into harmony, even if you don't believe it's possible? It has recently become crystal clear to me, step 1, 2, 3 clear to me, the process where conflict develops, the habits involved, and what to do to change that. Before we get into that, let's do this little exercise to see where we are headed. Close your eyes and imagine this. Your family, no conflicts, everyone getting along, everyone helping everyone, everyone getting what they need, everyone having a good time. Just imagine. Sound good? Well, that's what you can create with the one rule. This one strategy could put an end to conflict in just one session. I learned this strategy from 3-year-old children. I was teaching them a complex conflict resolution strategy, actually intended for adults, and they taught me this. So don't think you're in for a rough time. It's simple, it's easy, it's powerful and effective. It works if you use it. That's what it takes. You just have to use it. So let's get started. First, we're going to take a look at how conflict begins. In just about anything you can think of, there can be differences between two people. Picture this. No one has the same point of view. That means that no one physically looks out of your eyes except you. If two or more people are looking at the same thing, each person's point of view is different, if only slightly. Differences don't have to result in conflict. Everyone has differences. Differences in interests. Some of us like to read and some of us would rather play video games. Differences in beliefs. Some of us believe in the work ethic and some of us believe that life is a playground. Differences in values. Some of us believe in cooperation and some of us believe in competition. Differences in likes and dislikes. Some of us like chili and some of us don't. That's not to say that we don't have many things in common, but when we have differences and do not know how to resolve them in a humane and peaceful manner, conflict develops. Out of the situation of conflict spring all the troubles that develop between adults and kids. Think about it. When you're angry with your kids, it's because they want one thing and you want another. Whether it's over bedtimes, you want them to go to bed, they want to stay up. Homework, you want them to do their homework, they want to watch TV. Chores, you want them to do their chores, they want to go to their friends. Whatever the issue. Learning how to resolve differences and the resulting conflicts in a humane and peaceful manner is what the one rule is all about. Once you've made the one rule your habit, you can avoid getting into conflict in the first place. The one rule is simple. It's finding agreement before you decide what to do or not to do. As long as there are no differences, there is no need to use the one rule. Remember that earlier I said I'd become 1, 2, 3 clear about the process where conflict develops, the habits involved, and what to do to change that. We covered the first part, now let's get into the rest. You, the adult, are the example of the one rule in action. You make sure that the rule is followed, and especially that you follow it. The one rule shifts everyone's goals. The primary goal is now finding agreement. But remember that what everyone agrees to is something that they like, that they want, something that is satisfying and fulfilling to them and to everyone else involved. It's not just settling for second best or giving up on having something you want at all. And the one rule is only used when differences are leading to conflict. It is a path back to harmony, that's all. One of the common habits that contributes to conflict is the adult's habit of saying no to what kids want. Using the one rule eliminates this habit, so it is no longer a player. If you had this habit, you may notice that saying no might still be your first impulse, but it will vanish as you get used to the one rule. Another habit that can contribute to conflict is the adult's habit of being in charge. This is another habit that vanishes as you get used to using the one rule. You'll see that finding agreement is such a satisfying habit to develop. It relieves the stress of having to be in charge. And as you experience the enjoyment and relief of coming to agreements, You'll be so glad you adopted this new harmonious habit. Another habit that can be transformed by the one rule is the habit of being a bully. This is closely related to the habit of always being in charge. A bully is someone who has the habit of taking charge of other people, whether those people agree with this or not. I'm sure you can see how the one rule changes this habit. The new habit is finding agreement with whoever is involved. No bully here. Here is a story that wants to be told, even though at the time I had not yet become aware of the one rule. I was substituting in a class of 5th graders. I'd been there for a few days. There was one boy who none of the other kids seemed to like. His assigned seat was by himself at the front of the room. Then he was absent for a couple of days. When he came back, he started throwing little pieces of wadded up paper at the other kids. I wondered what to do. It was my belief that he did not feel good about himself, and I didn't want to make him feel worse, but I didn't want him to throw things at the other kids. They didn't like that. I guess I asked myself a question, and I found an answer. This is one thing that happens when you use the one rule. There was one large empty wall in the classroom. I had him move his chair nearer the wall. I told him he could throw the paper at the wall for as long as he liked. He started doing that. When he was done, he picked up the paper on the floor, and not only did he not throw anything at anyone, but he was also invited by a group of boys to sit at their table. Now, let's see what other problems we can solve with the one rule. Thanks for being here. Now it's time for Q&A and discussion. So, does anybody have any questions? Oh, Brian, you are
Brian,
muted.
you're
Hello.
muted.
Am I
Hi.
there? No.
Hi.
I appreciate the one rule, and I know a little bit about it just from working with Karen for a while now. One thing that came to my mind when you were going over your slides was when I used to run a daycare, I had a little 2-year-old at one point that liked to bite. And it was kind of hard to enforce the one rule because this kid was trying to get her own way all the time. I had to figure out how we could compromise. One thing that was going on, by the time the parent came to pick up the child, if the biting occurred before lunch, it wasn't relevant in my eyes to report it. You know what I mean? It was already removed and handled. And if you brought it up again, it wasn't fair to the child. So that was something that we were handling that ourselves. The parents did have to get a report. We didn't want the parents to take the child home and punish them for something they did at 8 in the morning and punish them for it at 6 at night. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but I finally figured out. It took me a while. Might seem simplistic, but it wasn't at the time. The kid didn't have the verbal ability to say what she wanted, to compromise, so she would just bite another person. It got kind of out of control. We had to compromise and do different things. It almost shut our business down because of the abuse, that other parents complaining and things like that going on. So we came up with all these different ideas of shadowing and practicing our verbal abilities with everyone instead of just one person. So here's what I'm trying to get to. We didn't just focus the biting on the one person that had the issue. We had the whole group discuss it without trying to identify or point out the one person that had the problem. You know what I mean? We read
Yeah.
books about biting and to the whole group, not just one person that had the problem. That helped us.
Huh. Interesting. Well, a couple of thoughts come to my mind. One thing that I didn't say today, I have said in the past, but is that 2-year-olds are kind of an exception to this because of what they're going through. So I haven't used this approach with them. I have a different approach that I use with 2-year-olds. So how did that work out? Did that
Yeah, well,
make a difference?
how much? Yeah, and I don't think it was specifically a 2-year-old in this situation I'm talking about right now. It could have been. I don't recall exactly. It was a couple years back. You just made me think of it. But yes, we did was we had to do trial and error of what to do. Like I said, one of
I
our
see.
things was shadowing, where they followed me around or another teacher, so we could keep an eye on that one student. But what we did was we picked the other shadowers too, so we weren't embarrassing just the one student that had the issue. Do you follow me?
Huh.
And then we read books on biting and what you're not supposed to do, what you're supposed to do, and we worked on vocabulary, and we geared the subject matter and the objectives to stop the biting that was going on. Even though the issue was only with one child, everybody got educated. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it might have been a room that was just a toddler room, so it might have been 18 months to maybe 3-year-olds. And
Okay.
took us a while to hone it to where we got where we wanted to be. It didn't happen by magic. It was still, the issue still continued, but we did compromise our lessons that we normally were going to use. It wasn't always going to be about biting, but we put that in there as part of the lesson all the time. And definitely had to stop the problem. And
Yeah.
I wish I would have known
Have
about
to.
I wish I would have known about the one rule back then and like guided that in my lessons. But we tried a lot of things, every day. You know, it was just up for grabs how we were going to control the situation.
Right. Yeah. We had to deal with one child that probably was around 2 and was biting. And actually what happened there for us was his mother came to be with him and show him other options. So it worked for her. It worked for our situation.
Was that child biting at home or just care?
I don't think he was biting at home. His brothers were all older.
Right.
There was nobody. I don't think he was biting at home. So I'm not, and I didn't watch the mother to see, but it worked. Whatever, she was there. She kind of like made sure that he didn't bite them, anybody. But if she offered him alternatives, I'm not sure. So
We had things where we would pin a sponge to the kid's shirt, you know, and say, if you need to bite on that, you know, that didn't work. And then I didn't think it was fair to pull one kid out. And so we all had sponges or little rags, we could bite on our shirts. I didn't like it, didn't work, but it was a teacher's suggestion, so we tried it. And the best thing I think that worked was we had books. I wrote a few books about, biting is for food and not for people. And sometimes they would be waiting in line, maybe go potty or something, and bam, someone got bit. Like, don't, we'd always go to the same kids, who did it, but it was just for no reason. But I kind of got it down to the idea that it was lack of verbal ability to say, I want to be here in line, or I want to sit near this guy, or you took my toy, or there was always a reason. They couldn't they couldn't say what they wanted to say, so they bit. Was that a frustration?
Yeah, it's
Like I said,
definitely to get
Mhm.
what they want. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it's about. And
Right.
that could well be.
Once they get that, then they're okay.
Yeah,
But you can't always get what you want. You can't always get it out of violence. And my other thing that
yeah,
I
not a
mentioned
good
earlier
plan.
was when the parent comes at 6 at night and the biting occurred at 8 in the morning, it's not relevant anymore. It already came and went.
Right.
That was hard to
Yeah.
even deal with the parent. So the parent would get a review of the day, and in the morning say, bit 3 times. She's like, you bit 3 times today? Well, hold on, lady. We already had nap time. We already had this. We already had lunch. All that stuff came after the bitings, but you're going to go deja vu back to this morning. I don't know if the kid even will get it, Anyway, that's just something that came to mind when you were doing your slides just now.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to miss the slides. It took me a while to get on. In fact, I had to
Oh,
use my phone to get on because I couldn't do it with my computer. But anyway, this all reminds me of my first nursing job was working with emotionally disturbed children in a hospital for emotionally disturbed children. And after 3 months, they put me in charge. It was there was 10 to 12-year-old boys, and I had a staff of some were regulars and some were students that were there from Northeastern University on work study program. So they would come for several weeks, 8 weeks, I think. Then they'd go and somebody else would come. Anyway, we had quite a variety of situations. One boy used to pee into light sockets, causing explosions and short circuits. Another boy liked to scratch people. Another boy liked to punch people in the face. One time he had a black eye. So we had different situations. But I organized the staff to have a trinity of children they were responsible for. So when this started, it seemed to help quite a bit because, for one thing, they were finding ways to keep the kids busy and engaged, and the kids felt real attention rather than just total chaos and
wow.
running around the
Nice.
ward and this kind of thing. So yeah, so it worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had 3 kids that were like each person had. How did it work?
Each person had 3 children they were responsible for.
Okay.
So they would write weekly reports. They would write, a plan for the week, what they would be doing together. And they would write goals and challenges and, all this kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But so that the kids knew there was a particular person that was focused on them
Right.
instead of just random.
Yeah. Wild Kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That sounds really good.
Yeah. It worked out pretty well. But of course, parents weren't necessarily a help because we send the kids home to the parents after they were doing fairly well, and they'd come back, you know, a wreck. So the
Right.
family dynamic were probably off, but we did start bringing the families in every month so we could get to know the parents.
Aha.
That was interesting. Yeah. Mhm.
Did that help?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it helped very much.
Wow. Good.
Yeah. 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 It was, the burnout rate for nurses was 1.5 years.
Wow.
So that's about as long as I stayed.
Yeah.
Well, and then,
Uh,
and then I went to be an RN secretary at the Mass Pioneer Infirmary, and I'm just transcribing orders all day. What a relief.
wow.
I went back to school. Yeah.
Huh.
You know, my children, my two oldest boys, they were born in Japan, and they both went to public daycare centers. I was teaching English like from 7 in the morning till 11 at night sometimes. And but the public, I mean, you had to really work hard to get a spot in the public daycare, like the government sponsored daycare. But everybody, yeah, all the kids, there was one assistant and for 3 kids. It was just no more than 3 on 1. For, I mean, they weren't the main teacher, but there were young girls who were like doing an internship or something, or some kind of part-time job. But it was interesting because there was daily reports back and forth. There was a book that I had to fill out, what they ate, when they peed, how was the pee, how was the poo, when they bathed. You know, it was like such a very clear structure for the parent, and the clothes that you had to pack. You know, 3 bibs. That they would never use a second bib for the child. You know, they'd only use one each time, a new one, a fresh one. But anyhow, the thing was also that they were very secure, and I mean, I feel like the agreement rule, the one rule about coming to agreement, was very, very easy in that environment because everything was so laid out. It was very clear, and everybody had the same goal as far as when things happen. You know, I mean, it was just super structured. Of course, I worked at a daycare here too, and we have a schedule, you know, and everybody knows what the schedule is, and it's time appropriate, you know, and it's addressing all different learning capabilities and play and food and, you know, interests and motor skills, different things, all addressing. But I mean, what came to my mind when you were doing your slides is about the idea about thinking about somebody else. You know, when you've got so much conflict rocking your world, like Leslie's situation, or maybe this fighter girl that has some kind of block to peacefully, you know, not clearly just not respecting somebody else, right? There's that
Right.
not having a it's like there's a storm going on where you are inside, and so how can I appreciate what is different about that other person? I mean, how can I even be thinking outside of my own turmoil, right? I feel like it's a little bit of a, because the agreement rule for me is it's a wonderful thing because each person has to think about the, like when you sit down and you lay out the rule, and that becomes the first goal, not my objective, like not what I need to do today, what my schedule is like today. And you know, if somebody else has their schedule, they need to accomplish those things, well, we're going to run into conflict because I have my agenda, you have your agenda. But when our first rule is to agree, then I have to concede that there's somebody more than me around. First of all, there's somebody
Right.
more than me. So, but the problem is, like with the Japanese daycare, sometimes I felt like the kids weren't even encouraged to have their own thinking, their own creativity. You know, it's like
Right.
we all agree because I'm not thinking about anything else. You know, I'm not like being creative. I'm not thinking critically, you know. So whereas like in my family, everybody's like engineers and stuff, and you can't get one sentence out of your mouth without somebody analyzing everything you just said. You know, it's like critical thinking gone way too far. You know, it's like, I'm not going to write a term paper on this. This is just my humble opinion, okay? So you have to preface everything with, this is not a discussion. I think I have the choice to share like how I feel about something, you know? But even then, people can be very, very individualistic and think, well, you know, I'm going to do this because my rational thinking is superior to yours, you know. And so it's a little bit both sides. I feel. How do you create that space that I think you're talking about, where each person has to think about the others, but also they have to think about what their needs are, and that they know that those needs have a voice. You know, how, because that's a hard thing to do too, to get somebody who doesn't want to speak, you know, or they don't feel like I can say, I have a right to say, they'll be so peaceful and harmonious and, you know, get along with everybody, but they never say what they want, that they are allowed to say what they want, and that somebody will care enough that that can also be a fun thing for everybody. You know? So I don't know. I was just addressing that point, that one rule about agreement, that it's quite a big thing, but it seems like quite a magical thing, that if you can get rid of those habits of of not trusting, and I think it's insecurity, those adult habits of saying no, or it's just impatience, you know, that being in charge, that I know that that thing's hot and that you don't, so therefore I have to say no, you know. Do you know what I mean? Those habits of the adults may really be hard to break, so that the kids can actually get it. Then when they're not thinking about somebody else, that child's going to feel sad. And 3-year-olds, for me, are the most empathetic age. You know, the empathy is so real, where I guess they've gone through the twos, they understand about will, but then when they're 3, they understand that what I do, my will affects other people. So it's, yeah, I think it's a really hard thing not to sabotage, but if it can be an environment that can that people can all understand what agreement means, that we're appreciating the other person, that everybody can voice something, but can that be even done with adults? Can that be done? Just a common
If they want to, if they want to. That's the thing about adults and their children, is that adults are willing to do a lot for their kids that they might not do for other people. And some of the thing, that's why this came out as the one rule, because a rule is a rule. And when I did not, when I was a parent, well, I still am a parent, but my kids are grown. But when I was working with children, whether it was my own or the children that I worked with at Children's House. I was into guidelines. I really wanted lots of flexibility in how things went. But I noticed, like, when, and it wasn't even called the one rule, that's a pretty recent thing, but that approach has kind of like, well, a rule aspect to it. I keep wanting to apologize for the rule part, but because it is not a common habit,
It's not
that's
flexible.
where, what?
It's not flexible. It is a rule.
Yeah,
That it
we're
can be implemented, because otherwise you can't ever implement it.
going, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. I won't go ahead on my projects until we figure this out, something that I like and you like. And the thing that I found with children, and see, the thing I found with children was that they take to this easily. In fact, what happened was, once I introduced this to a few different children, it's almost like that, I think it's the 100th monkey or something, like all of a sudden everybody knows it and does it. That's kind of what happened. It was like the conflicts just didn't come because they were taking care of them at the before level. Because they knew I would come along and say, okay, now we're going to find. Anyway, I don't know if that's why they did it. Maybe they, hopefully they did it because they liked it. But they did it. They took
Nice.
it on.
I mean, it's
Now,
like your environment. Everybody knows when we're in this teacher's room, this is how we're expected to behave or act. You know what I mean? Maybe get away with
right.
things at home or out in the playground, but when you're around this environment, this is how you will act. This is what is expected of you, and everybody knows that, and it's just part of what's going on.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like different languages, you know, like to this
or
person you
raising,
speak this language, to this person you speak that language,
or
because
you raise your hand before and get called on before you talk. Like, that's
right.
another issue that you made me think of. Some teachers will let you call out, like Montessori. Sometimes you're just allowed to talk freely, or you could just get up and leave if you want and go play somewhere else, or
Yeah,
go to the restroom whenever you want.
yeah.
Well, that's not traditional learning, and kids need to know the difference.
Well, that's, I mean, in Montessori, one thing we do is we transition kids, like when they're going to go into a public school or a different kind of school situation, then we have an in-between time where they practice those kind
Right.
of things.
Well, that's the one rule in action right there. Right?
Yeah, and it's
They're teaching you. You're teaching the concept right there. Because in Montessori, they could just go explore. They don't really have to.
Yeah,
But in traditional schooling classroom, no way. You got to get in line. You got to share. You got to wait till everyone. Yeah, everybody has to go to a potty at the same time. Yeah, right. But that's the way they do it, you know. And everybody has to say, all right, well, I'm going to learn to hold it in till noon, you know, because that's the way it worked here. Well, that's the one rule in action. So that teacher knows what to expect, right?
yeah. Like even the
Yeah.
kids that are in high school, you know, that you have to just kind of talk a lot about, well, you have to see it from the teacher's point of view. Okay, well, let's
Exactly.
look at this. You have to think about it from the administrator's point of view. Okay, you have to think about the budget that they have. Okay, you have to think about how other people, and it's not the kids. Kids just there to learn, but because the system is so, I don't know, so out of touch that they're the ones that are kind of being the 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 administrator or the politician or the parent, thinking about from the whole point of view of everything. So
Well, the
having a
thing
larger point.
with the one rule is that you don't have to find the answers for the other people that you're dealing with. You put out what you want, and if it works, great. But if there's some point where, like, they both want the same thing at the same time, then you figure out, well, because usually, all right, what I found, even with elders that I've worked with, it takes a lot longer to find agreement, but eventually it happens. With kids, it happens like right away because they want to get on with things. So the thing is that just because we think this is what we want, if something comes in our life that makes us like somebody else wants the same thing, then there's what I've found, my experience is that there is a way for this to work out well for the people involved. And it very much is getting to the truth of what really matters to you in that moment. And usually if somebody needs to use the pen and there's one pen, both people need to use it. Well, it turns out one person, they could wait a minute, or they could just write something really quick and then the other person could have it all together, or that there's some way that there is harmony in that moment. And it could just be a belief that in any moment there is a point of harmony. Maybe it is a belief, but I think this from what I've seen works whether people know about it or believe it or anything. It just works, that point of harmony does exist. And if we go into it knowing that, well, like the kids I worked with, they didn't know that they were going to find a way through this. Like one time I remember one child had brought us a bear to show and tell. And in order, when they came up against something they both wanted, that child said, well, you can hold my bear. And the other child really, really wanted to hold that bear. And I wouldn't have known that as an option, but they knew it, and that's how they resolved it. That's where they found their point of harmony. So it just, to me, it seems to exist, that it's a reality. And
So I'm sorry, but when
yeah.
you're starting out with the premise, then other people can get creative too. Is that what you're saying? Because the kids,
What?
they know when you're starting out with the premise that, okay, we're going to talk about this until we all agree, then what you're doing is opening the door for creativity of everybody.
Yeah,
Because
for
what you're
sure.
doing is you're not being in charge.
Right.
They're not waiting for you to come up with the answer.
Definitely.
and just keeping quiet, keeping mum, and saying,
Right.
something, just waiting, who's going to resolve this? And as soon as they turn their back, we're going to fight again.
Right.
You know,
Right.
You're trying to accomplish a goal or an objective, but you don't want to lose sight of that. That's what I'm thinking of, this one rule thing. If you're having a goal and an objective that you need to accomplish, you can't let the compromise that you're doing to get to the finish line, you can't change. You still have to stay focused. But
don't
Yeah,
throw the baby out with the
which
bathwater.
is,
Yeah.
children
Right.
have no problem staying focused on what they want.
Right.
They don't. They're focused.
No, they don't. So if something else comes up that is as satisfying or even more satisfying that they hadn't considered, they'll go for that too, which is
Sure.
what I've seen
And
happen.
well, you're the first to say, let them explore and move that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really set their heart on things. When they want it, it's just like with their whole,
Yeah.
set their heart
Right.
on it. It's like, I know
Right.
I have to have it. I have to have it.
That's my vision.
Right.
Yeah. But it's not designed for individuals. I think that's something we can all say, right? The one rule, it's not designed for an individual. It's a group thing.
Yeah, it's
Everybody's
for
on the
all of
same,
us.
right. We're all on the same page.
So we
I
can
like it.
be in harmony together.
Exactly.
And
Everybody bends for each other,
yeah.
working
Yeah,
together as
but not in a way that
teamwork.
diminishes us.
That's
Right.
the important thing. That
Very.
Positive
And that's one.
teamwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be a leader. That's kind of
Right.
like the Montessori method too.
Yeah.
That to teach is more of a facilitator, helping the students find their own way rather
Yes.
than them laying down the rules and this is how it's going to be because I said so. Same stuff we always talk about in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that really opens up all that creativity.
And the thing is, I mean, to start this, as I say, as far as I know, like a 2-year-old, to me, they are coming out of infancy. I think that as far as I know, they are still not totally formed. Is that correct, Leslie? Physically?
Oh,
Do you know about that kind of thing? I'm just caught because of your background. You may not
yeah,
know at all, but
yeah, there's a lot of development that goes on. I
yeah.
mean,
And so,
the first 6 years, they just like sponges, just
but
taking everything
also
in.
physically, I think like their bone head, their skull is not all hard and together, and that they're physically not they're not like other like little animals that can get up and run around and go find their food and
Oh, yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
to me, the 2-year-old is like coming in for a landing. They're like getting solid. They have learned, they have absorbed a lot and made it part of themselves. So I think that that they have more during that 2-year-old. I mean, I'm just saying 2 because it's like that stage. It may not be exactly the numbers, but it seems to be close because the term terrible twos has been created. They may not be able to actively participate in the one rule in a conscious kind of way,
Yeah, because
but
social skills aren't there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the time that they're developing them. So that's when the people around them, the adults in particular, it's a good time for them to practice the one rule, and to be an example of someone who uses that and lives by that. And so I started out because I think children learning how to do this kind of thing from the time they're small, the 2-year-olds having the adults as examples, and then the 3 and 4 and 5 just doing this because this is part of their lives, is finding harmony with each situation as it comes along. That's what I want to see. So
Nice.
I think having the adults model is good, but also if the children, if there can be 1 or 2 kind of wise ones in the group,
yes,
that they are
definitely,
modeling, that they're aware that
definitely.
a 2-year-old can't really participate, but when it's just like a peer group just above that,
That's
2-year-old
most
group,
effective.
right? Because yeah, they can
Yes,
see.
you are right, Sarah. Most effective. Yeah. So
I was couldn't help but to be thinking about all this stuff that's going on. I can't even watch it on TV anymore, about the killings and the rioting and all that. Like, these people need to come to our class here, because the things that they're doing aren't even relevant, to what the issue is. They're just making it worse,
well, it
people
would
need
You've
be.
got different factors. You got a lot of different factions and
exactly, Leslie.
a
Yep.
lot of
There's
different
no,
motivations. Yeah.
yeah, there's no vision. There's only destruction. Absolutely.
Right. Like, a guy lost his life, and that's terrible. But then again, if he was home being quarantined, he'd still be around now. So I could see, not that he deserved to lose his life, but why is everybody out playing in the streets and doing things when they're supposed to be home? Whatever happened to that? So there's a lot going on, a lot of
Yeah.
factors.
Yeah, but the whole racism problem has not been solved.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's what we need to deal with. Yeah. Individually and as a nation. Yeah.
You wonder how this could all coincide with what we're talking about, where people can compromise their values or their way of doing things, or if it's relevant or not. There's a lot of issues we could talk about.
It reminds me of last week we were talking about trust, how to create trust when trust has
Right.
been broken. Yeah.
Yeah, we did some time on that here.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I almost have that show up on YouTube.
Nice.
I'll get to that probably today, and maybe I can get this one up as well sooner than later. So,
Okay. Yeah.
well,
Hello, Karen. Can you hear me? Hello?
yes, Batul.
Batul, yeah, Batul here. I was just listening to
Nice.
your conversation. I finally managed to log in. Actually, it's in Pakistan, it is night time over here, basically.
What time?
Yeah. It's 11, basically 12 now. It's about to be
Oh,
midnight.
thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah, but I was just listening to you all guys, and I invited my friend Yasser Waheed, but he's also here listening. He's a principal at International School of Karachi in Pakistan, and
Yes.
yeah, and I also work with him as an academic coordinator over there. So I was just listening. It's an interesting conversation, and yes, I really love the idea of agreement which you are saying. But just please help me with one thing over here, Miss Karen, that sometimes this issue of agreement starts from the parents. It's really hard to convince the parents to agree amongst themselves first. Because if the parents, they are not agreeing amongst themselves, how can they convince the child to get it? You know,
Well,
this
the,
issue.
the thing is, the parents don't have to agree amongst themselves. This involves situations it can involve situations just with one parent and the child or children. It's nice if the both parents are involved, but it's not essential. I know that for a fact. So that the parent that wants agreement with the children can still create that kind of situation, and
Because
the
don't you think
children
so?
can learn it also.
Yeah, because sometimes the child, mind can be divided into two groups at whom to agree with. So, like I just heard, I think Mr. Berlin, he said that adults themselves should also agree, which is a good statement, that we ourselves, first of all, should be a role model. If we agree something with the kids, we should follow as well. And then show them as an example that see how we are following the agreement. Now it's your time. But sometimes this conflict come and the child mind is divided amongst the father and the mother, or let's say different decisions. So how to handle that particular time, the child?
Right. Well, the problem right at the moment is that I'm gonna have to go, but I would
Okay.
really like to pursue this. I think it's
Yeah,
very
please.
valuable.
Thank you so much.
If
Mhm.
if everyone is agreed, I would like to have this be a topic for next week. Does that sound
I would
Mhm.
love to hear.
okay?
Yeah.
All right. Then
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
that's what my focus will be on creating for next week.
Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you all
much.
so
Okay,
much for being
thank you
here.
so much, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
My pleasure.
very good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Yeah, sure. Good. Mhm.